You can see my fucking dog. Hey guys, it's Lykos and welcome back to my channel. I'm actually making another video. It's a miracle. I've actually kept to what I said I'd do, which I've never done on this channel before. So last week, or the beginning of this week, one of the two, I think it was last weekend, I asked people on Instagram what they'd like to see this week's video be, and everyone wanted a piercing related video, and more specifically my piercing story. I don't really know how I'm gonna film this, like how it's gonna go. I didn't plan this. I've just like sort of been like, yep, this is what they want, I'll just record it on the day. Probably the wrong thing to do. I guess the best place to start is what piercings I currently have, and their pain scale. So I'll go from least painful to most painful, I guess, is probably the best way to go for it. So my least painful piercing that I have at the moment was my tongue piercing. I felt the clamps and there was like a pressure on my tongue, but that was about it. Didn't feel the needle or anything like that, so I don't consider that to be painful. It was more just sort of uncomfortable. And the healing process for that wasn't that painful. It was annoying to eat. Like, I couldn't eat like solid food for like a week, but it wasn't, you know, extremely painful. It was just more so uncomfortable, and I kept biting my tongue because your tongue swells and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that was probably about a 1 or 2 out of 10 maybe at most. Next to that was my bridge piercing, which, if you don't know, is this one here, and that I barely felt at all, and that was pierced through an acne scar as well, so I was expecting that to hurt, but it didn't. I barely felt it. I was sort of like, when my piercer said she'd finished, I was just like, are you sure? It took a while to pierce. It's probably the longest piercing like time I've had, because they had to make sure it was straight, and my eyes don't sit evenly, so it took them forever to make sure the bar would be straight across my bridge, and I had to get the other piercer in to double check. So yeah, that was about a 1 or 2 out of 10 as well. After that would be probably my snakes. I've had my snake bites pierced twice. The first time would be next, and that was like a 1 out of 10. Or a 2 at most, because I got them pierced both at the same time, and that was back in 2016, and I had them in for a few months, and then I had to take them out because I started back at school. And then they were the first thing I got pierced aside from my ears, and they were the first thing I got re-pierced after I left school. So the first time I had them pierced, it was about 1 or 2 out of 10. It was really quick. I was expecting it to hurt a lot more. I felt the second one much more than I felt the first one, and if you're worried about that when you get piercings, if you get it wanting like things like snake bites or, for example, double nose studs like I have, I would suggest getting them one at a time. If you're worried about them like hurting more, or you're worried that you're gonna feel it the second time, let the first one heal and then go back and get the second one done. I've heard that helps with that. So yeah, that's what I would suggest doing if you're worried about that. For the healing process for them, there wasn't much affected by it. It was annoying because you have to wear longer studs when they're first pierced, so that you can allow for swelling, and it was annoying because I kept catching the back of them when I was trying to eat and stuff, but other than that, they didn't really affect much. And I do get that question a lot as to whether or not the snake bites affect how I talk, how I eat, how I drink, if having studs or rings is better. I prefer wearing rings because I don't catch the back of them on my teeth. Some people prefer studs because they're smaller and, you know, you don't have something sitting on the top of your lip here. I prefer horseshoes, and I do have horseshoes bigger than my lip size. Most people wear one that are like gonna sit snugly on their lip. I have a size up from that because I prefer them to be loose. It allows the movement of them, so it's not just gonna like push into my lip, and that's just my personal preference for that. But people do ask if that's going to affect my teeth, and it can do. Anything that's going to knock your teeth can damage the enamel. So if you're careful about it, it won't. But if you're constantly hitting your teeth in them, I suggest you wear the right size for your lip. if you're worried about your teeth. I would say my eyebrow is next, about a 2 out of 10 at most. It was definitely more painful than my snake bites the first time, or my tongue and my bridge. And I think that's because it's in a piece of area that I'm prone to getting acne, and I think there was just like a scar there as well, which is another reason I thought my bridge was gonna hurt, because I got my eyebrow pierced first. But yeah, other than that, didn't hurt. It's annoying. It's one of those ones that's kind of annoying when it's healing, because you will catch it on things like shirts, or if you've got hair like mine, you'll catch it on your hair. If you've got long hair full stop, you might catch it when you're brushing it. Yeah, and that sort of thing can be annoying, and if you're worried about it rejecting, do your best to avoid catching it. It's kind of difficult when it's healing, because obviously swelling and lots of stuff, but once it's healed, constantly catching it can cause rejection once it's fully healed, so just be careful with it, and you shouldn't have any problems with it. My next, least painful piercing would be my nose studs. Again, I got these both done at the same time. The first one didn't hurt at all. My eyes would, because it's so close to your tear ducts and it's cartilage and it's so close to your eyes will water. And that's just how that works. But the first one didn't hurt. Second one I felt more, again, because they were both done on the same day. And I got them pierced not long after I got my septum pierced, so the area was already kind of sensitive a bit. So yeah. As for the healing period for these, they suggest you wear something over them if you've got studs in them, so that they don't fall out. And that was really annoying, having to sleep with a plaster over just one side of your nose couldn't be annoying, but I got them both pierced at the same time, so I had to wear one on either side, and that was just annoying. And I was willing to do it. I was fully prepared, because I knew that was what I have to do, and that was where I was willing to do to have them. So if you're willing to deal with annoying healing periods, they're a great piercing to get, first piercing. Again, if you're worried about the second one hurting and you do want both sides of your nose pierced, get one at a time. It's probably a lot easier for maintenance wise for them they're healing to do them one at a time as well, and it's probably less annoying to sleep with both bandages over your nose. As for sleeping on the side of it, if you get both pierced, just try to sleep on your back, I suggest, is probably the best option for that. Or make sure they're properly covered and the plasters aren't going to come off. Because you might have to tape them down, maybe, the plasters, depending on your skin, if you've got oily skin. Just so that the nose studs don't come up, or they don't get caught on anything while you're sleeping and don't get pulled out. Or the plaster doesn't come off when you're sleeping and then they get pulled out. Just all of these little things that you've got to sort of think about while they're healing, which is why I do suggest getting one at a time, unlike me. After that would go my snake bites pierced the second time, and the only reason these hurt more than the first time was because I got them pierced in the exact same spot. My piercer didn't have to mark it or anything like that. They just put the needle through where the scars were from the previous ones. So it went directly through scar tissue, which is guaranteed to hurt more. And again, the healing process was exactly the same, just as simple as making sure you don't catch your teeth on them when you eat. After 2 weeks with the longer studs, you can change them to shorter studs, and then after they're fully healed, after 6 weeks, you can change them to horseshoes or a ring. Which, if you prefer not to have studs in your mouth, I'd suggest doing so after 6 weeks, because if you're like me, it makes it easier to function. It doesn't affect your mouth as much, in my opinion, and stuff like that. And finally, the most painful piercing I currently have is my septum piercing. And the actual needle as much didn't hurt, the actual initial piercing and the jewelry, all that didn't hurt at all. It was mostly the clamps, and I think that's because they have to clamp it so that the little holes in the clamp are directly where it's going to be pierced. And it's actually pierced, supposedly, I think, in between two pieces of cartilage, so the clamps go directly on the upper cartilage, which is what hurt. And the clamps were there for a good, minute, maybe, at most, which is what was uncomfortable. It was really uncomfortable, mostly, but it did hurt. And I'd say, for that, it would be about a 4 out of 10 at most, but it was my most painful piercing. And there, There is a reason I haven't spoken about my ear piercings yet. As a few of you guys will know, I do have my ears pierced. I got them pierced with a gun. Yeah, I got them pierced with a gun when I was like 11 in the mall, and my god, was that a mistake. My ear piercings didn't go well when they were initially pierced. They got the gun caught on one of my side of my ear, and that side of my ear, a month later or so, the back of my earring went into my ear, and it had to be like pulled out. I don't actually remember the initial piercing, like what it felt like. I was 11, I'm now almost 18, so it's been a few years since I've had it pierced, so I don't remember the initial pain of that. However, I am stretching my ears, and the first time you stretch your ears, it can sting. I wouldn't say it was any more painful than my bridge piercing, so it's probably about the same area as my tongue and my bridge, because that's a more recent thing I've done. I don't think as far as I remember, the actual ear piercing didn't hurt at all, but so again, I'll say it's about the same as my tongue or my bridge. Yeah, that's my piercings and their pain scales. I have, for those who don't know, all of those piercings added together is 10 piercings, which is quite a lot. And with having so many piercings, you get asked why a lot, and I don't consider myself heavily pierced. This is very few piercings compared to what I want. And I get asked why I have chosen to pierce myself 10 times. Quite a lot, because a lot of people I'm around, I live in quite a rural area, and the city I go to college in isn't heavily modded. There are a few people, like one of my best friends has piercings, but it's not a common thing to have more than 2 or 3 face piercings. I have 8 face piercings. And with that comes the question of, a lot of the time I get told, you look better without the piercings, why did you do that to yourself? Because I fucking wanted to. That's basically as simple as it is. I wanted to. My first piercings I got, I've always loved the look of piercings. Always. And I'd always wanted my ears pierced because I've always wanted to stretch them. I didn't stretch them until this year because I wasn't sure how big I wanted to go. Like, I've always wanted to go big, but I didn't want to start stretching and then get to a size and realize actually I don't want this size and have to try and downsize. So I thought, I'll not stretch my ears until I know roughly, at the very least, where I want to go, and then not go above that number until I know whether or not I want to go above. Like, get there, see how I feel, go above if I want to. So I've only just recently started stretching my ears. But my first facial piercings were my snake bites back in 2016, and I've always loved piercings. I love the look of them, I always have. I think people with piercings are like really cool looking, and they're just my kind of style, I guess. But I get they're not for everyone, like, at all, and I can understand why a lot of people ask me why I've done this, because they may not understand my personal reasons for my first piercings and why I've continued to get piercings since then. My snake bites were pierced, the first thing I got pierced because I came out as trans the same year as I got them pierced, and I would always see like these guys with piercings and them without the snake bites and stuff like that, and I thought they always looked slightly more masculine with them. My parents have always seen like snake bites as a masculine piercing, and a lot of people I know will have the same opinion. So I'm just like, if I'm gonna get my first piercings, and I've always wanted lip piercings, why don't I get snake bites? Because they look cool, and they look more masculine to most people. And that was sort of the main reason I got them pierced first. I like to stand out. I mean, I have no issue with people who look generally like what society would call normal. No issue with that. If that's how you want to dress, then you do you. I just prefer to dress otherwise. And that is another reason I have 8 facial piercings. Once I got my first piercings done, I fell in love with them, and I started thinking, oh, what piercing do I want next? But unfortunately I didn't get a chance to pierce anything else when I started high school again, because I was homeschooled when I got my snake bites pierced. When I started high school again, I had to take them out. So I was really upset about that, and then I ended up leaving that high school not long after I started for personal reasons and health reasons. So when I left, the first thing I wanted to do was get my piercings again. So I got my snake bites re-pierced, I think September or October last year, somewhere around that. I think it was just after I dyed my hair green, so it would have been around October-ish. And I instantly was like, I know what I want to get pierced next. So right after that, I think it was like 2-3 months later, I got my, maybe less, I got my septum pierced. And then like 2 weeks later, I got both sides of my nose pierced. And then I was just like, okay, I'm gonna take a break from these piercings for a while, because I want more, but I don't have the money for more. No. Then I got my tongue pierced, as my most recent piercing, because I like them. I think the next thing to go onto is how much they cost. Piercings are not cheap if you get them done properly. Never ever ever go to the cheapest place around you. Go to the place with the best ratings, the best reviews, the most professional people you can find in your area, and if they're too expensive for your budget, save. It is well better and well more worth it to save for the piercings and pay the extra money than it is to have a bad piercing that's going to get infected or going to cause issues that you're going to have to take out down the line and get re-pierced, if you can even get that area re-pierced, because of what's happened to it, which is going to cause you to spend more money anyway. So I would say, do your research, find a good quality piercer who knows what they're doing, and yeah, get a well worth result. I go to one body piercing studio. I only see the two piercers there who work there, are fully qualified, and they are really lovely people and super kind, and they know what they're doing. And I've never had an issue with any of my piercings. I know people who've gone to other studios in my area and had so many issues, and like, they're all tied back to the initial piercing quite a lot of the time, or people not following the rules. Here's the thing, if you get an issue with your piercing because you've not looked after it, that is not the piercer's fault. If you are not following like the aftercare regime, it's probably because your piercing isn't clean. If you're getting irritations or issues like that. If you have followed every step of the aftercare form and all of that, either your body is not taking the whatever jewelry you have in it, it's not taking that well, or it has been pierced wrong. And yeah, so if you want to lower the likelihood of having issues with it, go to a decent piercer and spend the extra money. It's well worth it. Well worth it. Piercings are not something to mess around with. Never pierce yourself. I know people who have pierced themselves and caused serious damage to their own body because they've pierced themselves. And this goes for any body modification like tattoos, stuff like that. Go to a professional, make sure the place is clean and sterile, and just don't do it yourself. There are so many issues you can get from doing things wrong that it's just not worth it, to be honest. If you do not have personal hygiene, like as a must-keep thing in your life, the chances are you shouldn't be having body piercings. If you're not gonna stick to hygiene, keeping the piercings clean, do not get them. It is an open wound on your body, and while it's healing, it needs to be like sanitary, and it needs to be cleaned, and it needs to be looked after. And if you don't do that, it's gonna go gross, and it's going to cause problems. So if you're not gonna put in the effort to look after it, don't get them. Piercings can be very high maintenance, especially oral piercings, because you do, especially once they're freshly pierced, you do have to clean your mouth every time you eat or drink anything that isn't water, and you constantly have to make sure your mouth is clean or there's nothing stuck under the piercing. And that continues on after it's healed. You do need to keep cleaning them once they're fully healed, and you do need to keep them maintained. And it's a full-time thing. Once they're healed, you can't just go, oh, don't need to clean it anymore, oh, don't need to check this or that. You still need to do that once they're healed, and if you're not prepared to do that, don't get piercings. They are something that, if you keep them for long periods of time, are a long period commitment to looking after. Because it is a piece of metal going through your body. Even if you don't have metal going through it, and you've got something that's like deemed as the perfect thing to have in that piercing, you still need to keep it clean, because any jewelry can get dirty or contaminated with like bacteria, and if you're not cleaning it, that bacteria is going to go into the hole that the jewelry is sitting in, and that could cause issues, especially if it's oral piercings. I know so many people who have oral piercings and don't clean them, and it's one of the most disgusting things I know that people do around me, and I can't stand it. I spend a lot of time making sure my piercings are clean and looked after. I tend to clean them all in one go in the morning and at night. And then any particular piercing that needs cleaned more than that gets cleaned when it needs to be cleaned. And it can take 20 to 30 minutes to clean them all if there's something like going on with them. Like if there's been an irritation because I've caught my eyebrow piercing, or I've knocked my bridge, or I've eaten something that was messy and it's got caught in my piercings, then I'm gonna be there for a while making sure it's clean, and I am willing to do that. And if I wasn't, I wouldn't have them. And I think what I'll talk about next is the piercings I want. I'm not gonna list all the piercings I want next, because there's a lot, but I'm just gonna state that this is not as far as my body modification's going. There are a lot more piercings I want, and they're going to happen. I am going to get them eventually, just not yet. I'm currently trying to save to go to the UK so I can afford all of that. I'm trying to afford my next tattoo as well, and I'm also saving for all these things that I'm doing in the next 2 years. So I've put piercings on a side thing for things I'm getting, and I'm just gonna, if I've got the spare cash floating around, get them then. And I think the very last thing I'm gonna talk about for this particular video is how much all of my piercings cost. And I'm gonna calculate that because I don't actually remember. So in total, just the actual initial piercing, not including all the jewelry I've bought for my piercings since, just the initial piercings, and this is not including my ear piercings because I cannot remember how much that cost. And I'm not gonna count the cost of the tapers to stretch my ears because I've bought several, so I'm not gonna include them as a cost. So just for my facial piercings alone, I spent $370 on these, and that's New Zealand dollars. You can calculate that into whatever country you are from to see what that is in your money. So it's not a cheap thing. $370 for 8 piercings. It's not a cheap look. And yeah, it's something that I have deeply loved and have enjoyed doing to myself, and I often get the question, why would I do that? And if I didn't want to and I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't have them. And people saying, you looked so much better without them, isn't gonna change my mind. I got these piercings because I wanted to. I didn't get these piercings to look good for somebody else. I wouldn't have spent $370 to please someone else in my life. I'm doing this because this is what I like. And it's how I prefer to look. And it is something that I have been yelled at for in the street, picked on. It's an excuse to be targeted for a lot of people who don't like them. And that is something I have to be prepared to deal with. But it doesn't bother me. I am completely fine with that. And I'm prepared to deal with that. To look how I want to. But yeah, I think that's about wraps it up for my like piercing story and like all of the piercings I currently have. If there's anything in particular that you guys want to know about my piercings, I will do a piercing Q&A. But for now, I think I'm going to leave this video here. So if you enjoyed, hit that like button, leave a comment down below for what you want my next video to be. Next video's theme is going to be trans related, because that was the other option for my video this week. So if you want to see a trans related video, leave comments down below. Passing tips, a Q&A, these are some of the suggestions I've had already, and I'm gonna ask the mass majority on Instagram, so if you haven't already, follow me on Instagram. That, along with my Twitter and my Facebook, will be in the description below, as well as the discount code that I've been promoting for recently. That'll be the first link in the description to the, and I will talk about that in next week's video, because it will be translated and they deal with translated things, so I'll talk more in detail about that in the next video. And yeah, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment something down below for next week's video, and yeah, or just leave comments. Tell me what you thought about this video, what you think about my channel, what your opinion on piercings is, what piercings you have or want to get, and yeah, just share your stories down below. But yeah, once again, social media will be down in the description below, and yeah, stay you, stay happy, and don't forget to smile. Over and out.